So we have got. Let's start with The Cry, because we didn't talk about it in our last podcast, or we didn't talk about 3. So 3 and 4 together. The basic end of 3 was the revelation that the trial was the murder trial of the husband, and Jenna Coleman's character Joanna was being tried for the murder. The 4th episode was sort of building up to that, because we knew now that he was dead. We did sort of talk about, didn't we, that he wasn't in any of these scenes.
Yeah.
And we had an idea that it had something to do with the baby. You know, there was people outside holding placards, saying justice for. Was it Noah, the baby?
Yeah.
Noah. Yeah.
Justice for Noah. She'd found out that it was his fault that Noah had died. Basically, we haven't actually discussed that. You know, the Noah dying thing, have we, on the show? The first reveal in 3 is that Noah died sometime between the airport and stopping off in some sort of clearing.
Yeah.
And you know, he'd gone cold. Joanna wanted to inform the authorities. He was saying, you know, no, I'll never get custody of my daughter, and you know, they'll never believe us, and we'll be done with manslaughter. Let's just
Well, he kept saying that she would be done with manslaughter.
Yeah,
because
he was given medicine she didn't test beforehand, and it turned out that it was him giving the medicine when she went to the car, or no, she went to the shop. He was at the car hire, so it was him who'd ultimately his action that resulted in the death of Noah. She found out about this via a letter written to her by someone who was on the plane.
Well, it was the woman who took the baby off her for a brief moment.
Yeah.
You can remember that in episode
the only woman that seemed not to be complaining about the fact there was a baby crying.
Yeah. And for some reason she appeared at her table, just to narrate this letter.
It's a new kind of Skype.
And so when she found this out, that it was his fault, they went on a drive in the middle of nowhere. He admitted it. She sort of took her hand off the steering wheel, took his seatbelt off, and he went flying.
Which I thought was brilliant. I thought the release of the seatbelt was really well done, I have to say.
But at the end, she is released. She's found guilty. And
she basically keeps the pretense up as well.
Yeah, that he got missing, and she sees his ghost, or a version of him, in the court, and he's sort of almost doing what he would tell her to do, to sort of keep lying about it, lying about his death and her role in it.
I have a question, because he lied to her about where the baby was buried.
Mm-hmm.
Are we supposed to believe that the body was buried, you know, where he took that photograph?
It's in the house that she moved into.
Yeah, it's there, isn't it? Because that was one thing that, again, it's heavily implied, and I got it, but it was never confirmed, that he was taking the photograph as maybe a way to frame her again, if he needed it.
No, I don't think it was framing. No? He just wanted to have a picture of her where the baby was. I took it to be. And then she took... Yeah.
Because of the way that his brain worked, I wondered whether there was some sort of Machiavellian way behind it. Like, you know, she always knew where the baby was buried, you know, in case he needed it.
I never thought of it like you could be right. I never viewed it like that.
Is that why they kept playing Under the Boardwalk?
Yeah.
I have to first of all give a massive apology to everyone involved in The Cry, even the Grips and the Best Boys. I have to give a massive apology to it. It's not often that I stick with the show that I really have issues with in episode 1.
It's not often you apologise.
It's Jenna Coleman's performance that kept me wanting to watch, because whatever I thought of the first one, I knew she was putting in a belting performance. And I think actually, as good as she was, I think Ewan Leslie was the real star of this. For me personally, I've not had much experience of him, but I think his character went to different depths that I could not have foreseen. I thought it was a really smart 4-part drama that, when it came to the end, left me feeling surprised a lot of the time, things I could not foresee or guess, and it kept me on my toes, and I thought it wrapped up perfectly. And I want to send out a massive apology for writing it off too soon. It may be that you didn't watch it because I'd written it off, because I know most people who listen hang on my every word on the podcast. So if you did not watch it because I'd written it off, this one time I was wrong. It was one of my favourite BBC dramas of the year, just because I didn't know where it was going at any point It kept me engaged. I think the characterization was really good. It's more memorable than Bodyguard for me in terms of plot and the way it developed and moved on. I thought it was brilliant, if I've not said it before.
I can see some big arguments coming at the end of the year.
Why?
Well, I can think of a third show that could even be considered better than these two that we've all seen as well in Killing Eve. The top three is going to be highly
contested.
Killing Eve.
Matt's going to make us put that on the US side of things, you see.
Matt.
Yes.
Great.
It's international, and there are some grey areas. Which we always
do two shows. Best of the US and best of the UK.
No, not best of the US. Best of the
rest of the rest.
Because the bridge would be in that as well, don't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
There's not a lot I can disagree with Luke on that one. I think it is a very good drama. I do think I was happy with the ending. I still go back to that first episode though and go, I was disappointed by how little was in it and how little exploration there was of the characters in that first episode. I'm not saying I was never going to watch the second and third one, like Luke said. I don't think that was ever going to be a situation. But I do think that coming off the back of Bodyguard, the first episode wasn't as strong as it could have been. And I do believe there will be people out there that might have had to have gone back and watched up on iPlayer and stuff like that, to really get the buzz about this show. I agree. I think Jenna Coleman was great.
Yeah.
Ewan Leslie was great. I also think there was some good interesting performance as well by some of the detectives. Yeah, I definitely think this is a really good drama, and I think Jenna Coleman should be up there for a BAFTA next year for this.
Agreed. The same. I think that I preferred the third episode. I think that was my favourite of the four. And I think on balance, I'll agree with Luke that the sort of device of the sort of different timelines was used maybe a little bit more in the first episode than it was throughout the rest of the sort of timeline. But I think they did tell a good story. Performances were great. I think the atmospherics, the Australian scenery, and the narrative devices like the letter and things like that. And it did have quieter moments where, and I know you're making comparisons to Bodyguard, that didn't have. This had those moments of reflection, and it allowed the actors to sort of breathe and you saw their inner emotions. Joanna wanted to grieve. He was all sort of for PR and things like that, and losing his job, starting this foundation, writing a book. That they were interesting avenues to explore in terms of the child that they'd lost and the cover up and things like that. But yeah, enjoyable. Recommend.
There's one thing I would say. I watched the third episode with my mum and two aunts. I went away last week as well. I wasn't on the podcast.
My mum fancied a laugh.
Yeah. No, my mum. Yeah. Well, no. My mum hadn't seen either of the two first episodes. My aunts had watched them, but hadn't understood. So I spent a lot of the third episode.
Oh my god! It runs in the family.
I would have loved a live stream.
Yeah. I spent a lot of the third episode explaining bits of the plot to my two aunts.
Could you pause it, or were you watching it as it? You couldn't pause it.
No, but they would say, "Oh, why has he done that?" And the baby, they all got the bit that the fact that the baby wasn't in the car at the end of episode 2, but they missed some of the nuances along the way as well.
You could say you didn't know your aunts from your elbow, but there you go.
Also, the DVD's out in November. I will contact the BBC and find out whether they've already done the commentary tracks, because I think if we can get you all in the same room,
aunts and mum,
exactly. The Cry, all on the iPlayer now, should you wish to take us up on our advice. It really is good. 4 hours you can do it in, or two 2-hour sittings, whichever the way you want. Perhaps over some sea bass. I don't know. BBC iPlayer now.